Did you know that only 0.3% of the world's fresh water is available to man? Yes, you heard, 0.3%. The rest is underground water and polar ice, which is unreachable. We are now in one of the driest and most stunning areas in the world, southeast Jordan.
Oh là 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 là, c'est magnifique! Regarde, c'est incroyable ce truc! Avec le soleil comme ça qui est en train de descendre. C'est ça qui est beau, voilà, ce que je voulais faire. C'est ça que je voulais faire.
And there, in the middle of the desert, we discover a spectacle, an entire city cut into the rock. We're in Jordan, and this is Petra. Despite the lack of water, it's a city erected in the middle of the desert. Petra was a caravanserai, the biggest supermarket in the area. It housed close to 30,000 caravanners and traders of the incense trail. It was in the 1st century AD, and they were called Nabateans. When the Nabateans traded incense between Arabia and the Mediterranean, Petra used to be an important stop-off point. The city became deserted 2,000 years ago when camels were replaced by boats sailing round the desert. In Petra, it rains 9 days a year. To collect water, Nabateans created kilometers of channels and cisterns cut into the rock. And above all, the Nabateans used to have a real knowledge in saving water. In Petra, I meet up with a person whom I admire, Riccardo Petrella, an Italian economist who fights against the idea of water as merchandise. So Nabateans used to live with almost no water. Do you think we can learn from this?
Moi, je pense qu'on peut apprendre beaucoup de leçons. La première, c'est qu'un peuple peut vivre avec peu d'eau s'il fait un usage collectivement, un usage raisonnable, un usage parcimonieux et un usage également solidaire. Ça, c'est fondamental. Si on fait ça, je crois que le reste, ça va tout seul.
Is it true that people die every day because of unhealthy water?
C'est ça le scandale d'aujourd'hui. Le scandale de l'eau, c'est que malgré nous ayons la possibilité de permettre à tout le monde d'avoir accès à l'eau, eh bien il y a encore 4500 enfants qui meurent chaque jour à cause de maladies dues à l'absence d'eau potable et à l'absence de services sanitaires. Et moi, je trouve que c'est le scandale le plus significatif de notre société actuelle.
Fighting for the right to water is fighting for the right to live. That's why Riccardo campaigns on an international level to include rights to water into the Charter of Human Rights. But what gives us a hard time is the unequal distribution of water in the world.
Il y a à peu près 150 à 200 millions de personnes sur la surface terrestre qui ont effectivement ce problème par un fait objectif d'absence d'eau. Mais on constate que même dans les déserts les plus profonds, le riche a toujours accès à l'eau.
So it's always man's responsibility that's involved.
On arrive à dire que finalement la solution au problème, c'est votre pouvoir d'achat. Aujourd'hui, l'eau est devenue une marchandise. Et la vie doit être gratuite. Et l'eau qui est la vie, l'eau pour la vie, pas l'eau pour la douche, l'eau pour la piscine, l'eau pour la vie doit être l'expression de la gratuité de la vie.
Las Vegas has cost billions of dollars and also billions of liters of drinking water just for a fantasy. But for how long?
We are in the Mojave Desert in the south of Nevada, the driest state in the United States. Here, the average rainfall is 200 millimeters of water per year, 3 times less than in Paris. Ever present, the sun maintains a burning heat. Against this background, we find one of the world's most impressive cities, Las Vegas. Night falls at last in the desert, and Vegas is revealed in all its extravagance. Despite the permanent drought, water is everywhere. The casinos continue outdoing each other with their excessive water displays, but then they can do just what they like. They bring in $6 billion a year. The result? Water consumption in Las Vegas is 2 times higher than the US average, over 1,000 litres per day per person, 4 times bigger than in France. Nothing seems able to quench Sin City's thirst. Pat Mulroy is the most powerful woman in Nevada. She's in charge of the water supply for Las Vegas and its region, cost what it may.
When I wake up in the morning, today has been taken care of. What I worry about is 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That is of utmost concern to us, because when you live in the driest city in the United States, you can't wake up one morning and find out that there's no water.
The problem is that Las Vegas will soon be lacking water. The city has seen the most rapid growth in the US, a population of 1.5 million inhabitants, which should double in 10 years. A demographic explosion kept going by the 40 million visitors who make Las Vegas the top tourist destination in the US. For Pat Mulroy, nothing should hold back this extraordinary expansion, especially not the water problem.
We have the job to provide the resource no matter what they may envision. We can have input into terms of how that growth occurs, but we should not be dictating where it occurs, nor if it occurs.
Nobody worries about wasting the water. 3/4 of Las Vegas's water consumption is due to the gardens, parks, and the town's 50 golf courses. This only aggravates Las Vegas's biggest handicap, its dependency on Colorado for 88% of its water. The town's main water supply source is Lake Mead, an artificial lake, the biggest reservoir in the US. In all, 7 states in the west of America pump their water from Lake Mead, shared out according to an agreement taken several years ago, well before the prolonged drought which has hit the whole region. Today, Lake Mead has reached its limit. In 10 years, it has diminished by half.
The lake is dropping because the 7 states in the agreement are all pulling out the maximum amount of water that they can. So they're pulling out more water than is actually coming down the river, which is not what happened before. Sometimes business thinks they can change it to make it work their way, and good old Mother Nature comes back around most of the time. Southern Nevada gets a certain amount of water. They're allocated a certain amount of water to use. So even though the city grows, they still can only use so much water from Lake Mead, so the city has to look for other ways of finding water.
The only solution found by Las Vegas is to go and find water 500 kilometers away from the town in the east of Nevada. The authorities anticipate building a giant aqueduct to collect water from this magnificent valley. But for the leader opposing the aqueduct, Dave Tilford, the biodiversity of this region could be endangered.
This water is used by wildlife to come in and get drink of water, or by livestock from the ranchers that are in the area. And it produces this meadow out here where the wildlife, the deer and the elk and the antelope can come in and get feed. And this is the water that they're interested in, is the water that comes out of this aquifer that we don't know how much is there or how long it will last. These pipelines are going to be big enough that you could get into them and walk all the way to Las Vegas, standing up. That's how huge they are.
Well, the project will probably cost around $2 billion in today's dollars, which is a significant amount of money. Given the economic impact of that corridor and that tourist industry, it is worth every dime of that investment.
However, in Nevada, the water reserves have also suffered from the drought. Dean Baker and his 3 sons have managed the family ranch for more than 40 years, and he doesn't have enough water for his business.
It's been a number of years since there's been water in these troughs. They used to summer some cows around here and they'd come here to drink, but we don't do that much anymore. But this is, for years, had water in, but it's been a number of years now since it's flowed. We can look in the well and the water just goes down and down. Looks to me like it's about 15 feet down in there now. I'm crippled up enough that I'm not a very good mounter up.
Dean, along with the other ranchers, is worried about the fall in groundwater. The valley's 6,000 inhabitants are engaged in an unfair battle against the gambling kings.
So all of a sudden they realize that in order to sustain the growth that they want, so they can make more money. But my question is what happens when this water is gone? What happens? Do we come back in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years from now and this is just a pipe sticking out of the ground and all of these trees that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years are dead and gone? You know, where is Las Vegas going to get their water then? And what are we going to do? If there's no water here, where are my grandchildren going to go and my great-grandchildren? What are they going to do? Where are they going to get their water?
Yes, they're scared. They're worried that their ranch livelihood will be destroyed, that the world that they know will be destroyed. And so they're walking very slowly, and they're throwing every concern on the table they can. They don't own that water.
Legally, Las Vegas has every right, to the extent of depriving this valley of all its water and destroying a whole part of American tradition. Reasonable consumption should be enough. But this is not the time for thinking. Water must be found fast before the tourists and the investors start to flee.
Las Vegas is a unique place. When people come to Las Vegas, they come here to experience virtual reality. People that visit Las Vegas don't want reality to ruin their weekend.
But one day, reality will finally catch up with Las Vegas.
Here is the antithesis of Las Vegas, Amman, Jordan, where water's lacking. An inhabitant of Amman consumes 15 times less water than an American, and this amount decreases yearly with the increase of the population.
Attention! 1, 2, 3, ouais! Okay, thank you!
Amman, Beijing, Cairo, Mexico City. Did you know that we face a lack of water in half of our major cities in the world? And the most disturbing thing here is that 30 to 50% of water is wasted because of pipe leaks. Amman, Jordan's capital, had been built during the 20s. It used to be a village of 4,000 people, and now it's a big city with a population of 2 million people. Close to 50% of the country live here, without counting refugees from the war in Iraq, and they all have the same obsession